Hi, I'm Sandra Ingerman, and welcome to the Shamans Cave.
And I'm Renee Baribeau, and we are really happy to be here with you today. And Sandra, you want to tell them what we're going to talk about?
Well, so much of the world right now is looking at what do I do with myself now that I've been asked to stay in isolation. And so we want to talk about what happens when we need to separate from our daily activities and our routines that we're used to, and also how to care for ourselves while people are planting a tremendous amount of seeds of fear. How do we stay centered, focused, and positive during this time that we're in?
It's kind of an interesting topic for you and I to talk about, two depressives who spend most of their time alone at home. You know, I kind of love this topic, and I'm used to spending a lot of time alone. And I know Sandra is too, because, you spend a lot of time with spirit when you're writing books and planning webinars and workshops and things like that. So for us, for me, for sure, it's not so far of a step out. Although the trick for me is that, I do like to be social when on my terms. And so, that part's a little bit different, because the people I get to socialize with are the people who are standing at the end of their driveways when I take my nightly wind walk, as opposed to just like this morning, I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to go get an omelet at, the Sunshine Cafe. And, I'm not going to be doing that.
Right, yeah. Well, I've made mention about this a little bit, and I don't talk about it publicly, but tragedy really hit my life about 5 years ago. And what that did for me is, in a lot of ways, it brought me into the isolation that many of you are experiencing now, because I just no longer could go out. And I was like imposed in self-isolation because of lack of function and what I was able to do. And so much of what I've learned in shamanism is about initiations. And so, of course, when I kind of feel like my whole entire life has been one initiation after another, and they've all been difficult. But when I went through this one, I really had to go back into reflecting on everything I've learned through initiation and what initiation is from a shamanic point of view. And it is about cracking our shell so that we have more light to let shine and radiate, because we've created these hard shells in the overpopulation that we're living in. And it's our spirit and soul that carries us through these kinds of times. And so what I was saying to Renee before we started the show is, what happens when you try to stay too busy, even in isolation? Do you get to hear what your soul and spirit is advising you, and the wisdom that's being shared of how your own being is going to carry you through this time, instead of looking to the outer world for advice on how to do that?
Very interesting. The other night on the equinox call, I swear it felt like one of the wind was coming through as prophecy and talking about that, Sandra's talked about a lot about that we've been on this for 4 billion years and we're just a blip. So in what that I'm teaching is that, when we end one cycle and we're getting ready to start another cycle, there's a gap in the middle. And so in the gap of a day, it might be minuscule seconds, like the day resets itself. It might be hardly noticeable. But when we're talking about a gap between epochs, like there's a wobble, and we had to go through this. And now what I feel like happened in this pandemic is, whether or not, people have all these theories about whether it's a serious virus or whatever it is, but we just crossed the threshold, and there's no going back from this threshold. And like, in the hero's journey, it's one of the great tests of ourselves as humans. And, I saw myself early in the week getting mad at Zoom because I wasn't getting my recording fast enough. Like, all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, is this the kind of human I want to be this week? And I was like, absolutely not. In fact, I need to send those people at Zoom a nice thank you letter for how fast they recovered in 2 days from, this kind of a major hit. And so that this threshold that we passed, like, there's no going back. There will never be another time in our lives when we didn't experience a global pandemic, where in our lifetimes, because other lifetimes have, but where we been requested as good human beings to stay home, so that we don't exponentially spread this virus, because there are at-risk populations. And it's kind of like, well, what kind of good human being am I this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got an email from somebody saying that their child, they just found out their child was exposed to the virus, and asked me immediately, what do I do? What do I ask of my helping spirits in this situation? And, this is a place where we can really educate people when they move into a fear state around exposure. Because one of the things that we know is, if we can get into a high enough frequency state, a being that's of a lower frequency isn't going to be able to have a real impact on us. So how do we raise our own spiritual frequencies and teach our children how to do that? And we did a show on transfiguration once a long time ago, and it's in the archives. But for children, if you have children, and if there's any fear around this, and if you're home with them, a great game to play with them is have them imagine themselves as being a dancing star, and that starlight is filling up their whole entire body, every corner of their body. And then they're dancing their starlight and letting that light shine. So you're protecting your children. It's in a time of isolation. Instead of playing another video game, do some dancing. And you too, your starlight, and you're both dancing together, and your whole family filling up with light and then radiating light. And what a beautiful way to protect yourself and also contribute to the world. And so, there's things that we can do. People have been living, as Renee shared, really stressed out lives. I mean, really stressed out lives. And now all of a sudden we have this opportunity. Some of us have this opportunity to stop, not all. Some of us are still working through all of this. When you stop, what are some of the spiritual practices that you can do that will strengthen your spirit and your soul and carry you through?
That's great. The first thing that I thought of is kind of a silly spiritual practice, or, some of you might think so, but I take nightly wind walks, which, I do anyway, but now I take a nightly wind walk to the grocery store. It's like to see what's left for me at the end of the day. And a lot of times there hasn't been anything really too much. I was like, oh, I think we'll get some collard greens. So then I have to go back the next day to get what's going to go with the collard greens. And it's kind of self-amusement to see that we've never lived in a time when we couldn't just go to the grocery store, at least in America, and have, access to things, or be told, no, you can only buy 2 of those. And I'm not a hoarder. So, you know, my house was stocked up because I'm a chef, and, you know, we take inventory and we replace things that we're going to run out of. But, you know, there's kind of that thing. I pulled the other night, and I'm going to share this here. You can listen to the spring equinox in a couple of different places. It's on YouTube now. And I pulled Tate, the Lakota Sioux wind, which is the messenger about listening with our hearts. And so if we listen with our hearts, and what does that really mean? So it means that you have to remove whatever resistance is in your body elsewhere so that your heart can be actually open to listening to the messages, and start to really listen to what those messages are for yourself. Like today I woke up tired, and they're like, you know, I'm thinking, oh, well, I haven't done anything all week. Why am I tired? And then I'm thinking, well, you just did a, you know, a spring equinox gathering for 400, and you did a business gathering for another 100. You know, I don't have to go anywhere today because I can't. So what would be the worst thing about going out on the patio, sitting down and reading a book, instead of me being a taskmaster? Oh, you got to be working on your new book. Well, no, maybe I just could read one of the 100 other ones that are sitting on the shelves. Because we can't be tuned to the news.
Right. Yeah.
You know, even the news tells you don't listen to us more than 5 minutes a day.
Yeah, I had to, you know, when a few years ago, I stopped watching the news. I'm very aware of the news. I get it from many different sources, but I felt it coming at me in the way that it was off the TV. It was no longer healthy for me. And so the other night, my husband and I decided to watch all the different news stations, the local news stations. The virus was just starting to come into New Mexico. So, you know, of course, we wanted to know what was going on. And then for the first time in God knows how long, we put on the national news. And I have not been in an anxiety state. And you know, I realize I can lose loved ones. I can go in this virus. So I'm not saying that I'm not in anxiety because I think I'm immune from it. It's that I have my spiritual practices that keep me centered. And so I don't have to walk into that field of anxiety. But when you're just walking into a field of anxiety on TV and walking into another one on another station and then another one on another station, you've completely now taken yourself out of your own flow where you were starting to just get into your own flow. And all of a sudden, you've lost your focus and you're thrown over. And I think a lot of this virus, as it was for me in dealing with what happened for me, is realizing that I had lost my own flow and I had gotten into other people's flows, and that it threw my body off balance. And so the healing for me has been getting back into my flow. And I really believe that this is really important for people to do right now. And how do you do that when you're just getting bombarded by TV, your iPad, your devices? There's no way to stay centered because it's literally a psychic bombardment.
Absolutely. You all have to have your big black rock. You know, like when I take a walk and if I feel like that, because as empaths, and I know Sandra, you're an empath too, we don't even have to turn on the news to feel the density or the heaviness or the brokenheartedness of people who are caught in some other 3D vision of what reality looks like. When the truth of my reality is today, I open the refrigerator, there's food in there. I have water that's drinkable from my faucet. You know, I have a beautiful mountainscape. One of the things that I did do in the spring equinox gathering the other night was that I had people create a new anchor for themselves, because we've moved into a new epoch, or we're moving that way. So we need additional anchors, not not to lose the ones you had, but you might need to do a re-anchor. So you might really want to listen to that and find that second anchor point. Another thing is really understanding this this season. Like, there's so many people throwing their classes out at you now and stuff like that. And so I just want to talk for a second about, both Sandra and I are teaching classes this April. And what better, I tell my staff this week, or my team, what better time than to learn something new? So this week, instead of them getting all crazy, I meet with them every day face-to-face in a Zoom meeting to check in on all their eyes. So if you have family and stuff, a group Zoom is a really great way to check in and see that everyone's okay. And some of them have never been alone for this long, so they're really struggling. So every day we have a check-in. How you feeling? What's going on? What do you need? And it might be like they needed online, an exercise thing, but just have a little pod, 4 or 5 people that you can see face to face, and then learn something new. You know, if it's not with Sandra, you could take a Corsica or a Harvard or one of these things that really, what is it, something you really wanted to learn? And I know you're going to talk about how to build your spiritual immunity, and I'm going to talk about what is this ancient wind work all about? Learn the basics of it, and, really spend your time learning a new skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I wanted to let people know that Sounds True is putting out a free webinar. They went through their archives and got old recordings of different authors, different spiritual teachers that are really well known and respected around the world. And they're going to be offering that. And I will be sending out an email on that soon. I'm not quite ready yet. So if you're not on my email list, go to sandraingerman.com and sign up. And also I'll post it on the Shamans Cave Facebook page for people, because that I can do now. I think I have what I need.
And I can always post it. There's a lot. Go over to the Shamans TV too, because I usually post in our weekly email that we send out, because now we've gone back to weekly. I post an event that Sandra's involved with and an event that I'm involved with. Yesterday, my email had 6 events to keep you spiritually aligned. Now, I'd say pick one, not all 6 of them, but one, or Sandra and I both. I mean, that's a given. And stay here with us. So Sandra, anything last that you want to say on, staying sane during these crazy days?
Yeah, Renee had asked me if there was an exercise I wanted to lead, and I said no. But I want to just talk about an exercise that's really been helpful for me. Number one, I just want to make sure that during this time that none of you have forgotten to do your equinox ceremonies, whether you live in the northern hemisphere where we've just welcomed in spring, or the southern hemisphere where you've just welcomed in the fall. It's really important in times like this to keep your ceremonies going, to keep your homeland sacred. And by doing ceremonies and going out and thanking all the elements and speaking from your heart, that's going to bring goodness to you too, because then you step into sacred reciprocity. And again, with sacred reciprocity, you find your own flow, and good things flow from you and good things flow back to you. And an exercise that really helped me recently, the country was going through something. We're in a run. We're not in isolated events. Everything is connected right now. What I did is I started to, and I think I talked about this on one of our shows, I started to imagine my body as a piece of artwork. And I did this all in my imagination, although I was recommending that people actually do a collage of their body. I just did it in my imagination. And I imagined filling myself up with my favorite flowers, my favorite tastes. I love rose. I love the smell of roses. And so I filled my whole body up with roses so I can smell my inner rose. I put ice cream in my body. I put everything I love in my body. So what all was in my body was beauty and what I love. And so there was no room for negativity, and there wasn't any room. And that when I would open my eyes, then what all I'd see is beauty, because I was filled with beauty. And so when you're filled with beauty, that's all you see around you. So that's an interesting exercise that you might want to try.
I love that. And I think I'll do a wind whistling for Tate, the coda wind, to finish this up if I can.
Yeah.
Can I just send in? All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to blow it once, but feel what it's like, the wind of your heart. You know, what does the wind of your heart want to send out to the world right now? That's a beautiful message of love. Okay. We can just close our eyes and that felt really flowy and freeing to me, like to send out to my neighbors and my community, you know, that we're here, you have a lot of people supporting you. There's a lot of us. Over the last 25 years, we've made a lot of people who are awake, and you know, and I'm happy to be one of those, and I know you are too. So stay awake.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a lot of prayers out right now. I think, and Renee and I did a very powerful show on this, on self-worth. One of the best things that you can do for yourself right now is to actually receive universal love and receive love from the collective that's praying for you. Because when you're only praying for others and when you're only giving, you only have half of a cycle. And to stay in your flow and to bring harmony into your life and good health into your life, you have to finish the cycle and you have to receive the same love that you give out.
That was beautiful. And in Quechua, they call that Aini, today for me, tomorrow for you. Mm-hmm. And so it's a farming term, but it has a lot of value in our lives. So follow us over at shamanstv.com. Stay on our email list. We only send for this show from that list. So if you want to be on SandraIngerman.com or thepracticalshaman.com, there's other ways of connecting with us. And look for both of our upcoming classes on, you can go over the Shaman's Cave or the websites or however else you want to stay connected. But stay connected to that heart flow of positive energy, because this initiation will pass, and I believe we're going to be a better human collective for it.
Absolutely. Remember, this is all about softening our shells so that we can be a greater vessel of light and more evolved beings that participate in our harmonious life with the rest of the web of life on the planet. So blessings, everyone, and stay well.
In our next show, we're going to start our series on nature, our connections to nature. So see you soon.